Hey everybody, and welcome to my humble abode, the Oz Cave, if you will. Yeah, I'm going to teach y'all a quick class. I say quick, I'm trying to take up an hour. I think this thing all total took me about an hour and 20 minutes. I did a previous class where I did like the very basics, like what kind of brushes you're going to use, what kind of paint, some basic paint theory, that kind of stuff. This time I'm going to actually show it in action, right? This isn't my micro camera, so I don't know how well it's going to do. I'm pretty sure that the light's going to be too bright, so I apologize if it gets too smudgy or whatever. I can bring this up to Collegium to show you, what it looked like when we're done, but some of the still pictures when we're done is what's going to do it. So, yeah, this is great. Any questions, hit me up with them. Hopefully I'm doing a watch party for this, but man, I'm going to paint this, and because instead of a miniature, it's easier to see kind of what I'm doing on a bust. I'm actually using one that I got from Loot Studios. I 3D printed it myself, but it came from the company called Loot Studios. They do minis every month, and they're heroes. They always do busts of them in case you need bigger representation if you're going to be online or if you just really like the character. So I'm going to show you all how I did it on one of these, which is great. All this translates. It's very simple, very basic stuff, man. So don't worry about it. I'm going to be talking over it. I don't have any music because everything's licensed, so I had to get that. But this is going to be great. Let's just jump into it, man. Alright, so this is the guy we're going to do. I printed him out, got him resin hardened and whatever, and I hit him with some, yeah, you can tell he's a resin thing, that's why the holes are in him. I already hit him with a primer, just to spray, I think, Rust-Oleum primer and base coat all in one. There's arguments about using black, gray, or white as a primer. I'm going to use black. We're going to do the armor, the cloth, and the head, and the face. So it's basically there's going to be 3 steps in here. It's a lot of details and stuff. So if you do your primer, I can do a class on that later. Don't worry about that back part. So when you're working with a miniature, best thing you want to do is you want to work with the deepest part, which this is going to be his flesh. So we're going to do that first. But I'm going to show you my colors here. I use a lot of Citadel stuff, so everything I try to use is 3 colors. From darkest to lightest, same as my flesh, go from darkened to mid to light, and even if it's just white at that far end. My brown, it's got a brown shoulder strap there, we're going to use the brown, and then we're going to mix this white with the brown to make our high end. That's what I was talking about there. We're going to use a couple washes, Seraphim Sepia for the flesh, just gives it a little more ruddiness. Dreaded Agrax Earthshade we're going to use on the metallics, and I'll show you how we do that when we get through them. And then for the actual metals, we're going to use metallics. I don't use the non-metallic metallics. So Brass Scorpion, and then a lighter one that's the Rune Lord Brass. And again, we're going to use the Agrax on that. These are the brushes I'm going to use. I'm going to use this big one for our big areas, just for time's sake. Then this is my ultra fine detail brush, eyes, teeth. I think that's pretty much all we're going to use this one for. Super fine point. And then my other 2 are going to be my workhorses. This big one, that's going to be my workhorse. Do most of my stuff. The other one, just smaller details. Again, super cheap brushes. Get them at any Hobby Lobby. You're going to need some paper towels there and some water, not pictured, and a palette. This is a Wendy's napkin from 1999. We can get into the arguments on palettes and wet palettes later, but I just go straight from the pot, mostly because it's miniatures, so I don't have them sitting out that long and don't use that much paint. So we're going to start with their flesh. We always want to start with the deepest. Usually it's either a cloth or flesh. You have to go from the furthest from the outside. Always just get a little bit of paint on your brush. Don't have to dunk it. You don't have to just coat it with paint. And when you do this, rarely will you ever push the tip of your brush. You're generally going to start by putting your brush on it and dragging it away, back towards the handle, back towards yourself to put the paint on the model. As soon as you start jabbing at it, the only time you really need to do that is if you have like a crevice or something that the paint just won't get into otherwise, like with hair. I'll show you that in a minute. But just lay down a thin layer. Don't worry about if it's too thin. If you can see the primer through it or the model through it, don't worry about it. You can always come back and do another coat. You always want to do thin coats. The thinner is always better that way. You can water them down if you need to, but just put them on there. See how just like I drag it away from there. Just layer it on. Again, this is flesh, so it's super simple. Just get in there right up to the edge. Again, it's your first one, so don't worry about painting over anything. So like if you get it on the armor, you get it on the cloth, you get it on anything around it, don't worry about it. You're going to come back with other colors and you can cover that. So don't stress it. Doesn't have to be pinpoint at this point, right? So don't worry about that. Just keep it, put it on there. You don't want your stuff to dry out. That's why a wet palette is nice if you're using a lot. This is like the biggest neck I've painted because I'm usually doing like 28 millimeter, where this is like ginormous. Actually, this is like 50% smaller than what they gave it to me. Also going to do the nose, face, and then the inside of the mouth. Now, you can do a lot of different stuff with the inside of the mouth. A lot of this is going to be covered by that nasal plate of that helmet, so I'm not going to stress it too much. But the mouths, you can always go inside with a brighter pink or a bright red. I generally will just use a flesh color, and then when I use a wash, it'll put a shadow on it, and then the actual shadow of the mouth will really cover that for the most part. So just get your flesh everywhere you can. Don't worry about the eyeballs. Go ahead and paint right over them. Your white's going to fill those in, so don't worry about that. And then go ahead and get your mouth in there in the same way. See, I don't know why I even did the top of the nose, like that nasal plate's going to sit directly on it. So go ahead and get that mouth in there too. Sometimes I'll come back and do the lips a different color, just a different flesh shade, especially on the males, because if you just leave it one shade, it just your lips tend to fade the other way. Like your lip skin has a different, texture as the rest of you, so it's a different color no matter what. Most of the time when you paint the female miniatures or whatever, they'll expect makeup, and you can do the eyes or just the blush or a different shade of lips. So it's kind of a given. Most people are like, oh yeah, you got to paint a woman's lips. When it comes to the males, they forget. So always remember your lips are different. Your miniature, always be sure to move it around, look at it good beforehand. Like I forgot this guy had armpits molded onto here, that his arms actually stick off from the side of this. So don't stress if you're painting and then you come across later and you're like, oh, an arm. Well, I've already used all the flesh color. You can always go back at any time and go back over this. Even if you accidentally splash color, which I think I do with this one, on something, you can always go back and just repaint it. Just do a spot touch-up. So it's super simple. Okay, so always keep your miniature looking around at it. Try to keep it all track of it. But if you don't, like this, I thought I was good. There's a whole side of a neck I forgot. Like, look, right there. Like, here's this, and it goes all the way around. I was like, oh yeah, I was about to just forget all that. Again, I'm used to painting 28 millimeters miniatures. This is, I think, like 48, and it's a bust. So this is a lot bigger than what I'm used to. So, yeah, so if I forgot something or it's not as detailed as I expected it to, this is what we're going for. The flesh, like I said, usually you do one, maybe two skin tones, then some of the wash. Here's your lighter stuff. Now, unless I tell you, I generally don't wash the brushes if I'm blending this here. So this is, I guess, what would be considered a wet blend. You get your dark color, get a little bit on your brush, or leave it on your brush and just mix it there. Put it on your palette or whatever you use in your old napkin here. Make sure the paint that you're painting it on top of is dry. I've accidentally painted metallics on people's face stuff. Get your lighter stuff, mix it in right there. And then as you're mixing it, pull it away from the puddle. Like here's the lighter stuff. Putting it directly on top of that one. Mix a little bit. And then start moving it away from directly where you're doing it. You don't want your brush super thin. This is basically just a dry brush is all you're doing. Just a wet blend, and then you start knocking off a lot of the paint off your bristles of your brush, so it only leaves a trace. And then you want to go across where any of the details are, like this vein on the neck. You can kind of go over it that way. It's going to pick up the higher parts of the model, and less of the lower stuff. Gives you a little bit more shadow, a little more tinge, more shade. So, just anywhere there's flesh, go ahead and do that. Don't do it too thick. You never want to paint a miniature with like a gob of paint on your brush. You want to just knock off as much as possible. Don't want to start with a whole lot. And again, just give it a little bit of a brush over that. Then we're going to wash it and then come back with another one. So, just like I said, this is your second layer, and this is a blend of the first two. Again, don't always have to mix it on a palette. Most of the time, just the remnants that are left on the brush is enough to mix it and put it in there. And again, don't worry about getting it on the armor and stuff later. So usually your first one, especially if you blend it okay, you're not going to notice. Now, this is Seraphim Sepia. This is brown with a really light red to orange tint in it. It's good for darker skin, or if you want like an olive tinge or just a ruddy, dirty look to it. Use your flat dry brush thing here. Now, again, if you can't get that thing to stay open, the Citadel paint's got that little lip, which is perfect. But if you can't get it to stay open, stick a brush handle underneath it. So once you got your wash on here, again, these you can water down too. You don't have to leave these as thick as possible. Here, that's what we're talking about. Like, it won't stay open. Take that brush handle, put it directly under that lip, and it'll hold it. If it's got too much, drain it off. Whoop, whoop, and then put it right across there. Now, that usually when you do that, your first layer of it's really going to pick up that highlight difference that you did with the two flesh tones. The inks will settle down in the deeper parts, give you that fake shadow, and that's kind of a pothole a lot of people fall into. As soon as they do that, there's like, oh, there's a shadow, and they leave. Well, it still leaves that ruddy brown color on top. So a wash shouldn't be your final stage of anything. It should always be an intermediary in there. It's like part of the step. Problem is, it doesn't dry near as fast as the acrylic paint is. So you give it a wash, and once you get that wash on it, we're going to let that dry and go work on something else. So while that's drying, we're going to work on what's next. Let's see, the armor. The armor will be the next part, and then the cloth is going to be on top. So armor next. So Scorpion Brass is what I'm going to use. You can use any color, silver, gold, whatever you want to feel like. I'll do another class on non-metallic metallics, where you take browns, tans, and whites to make gold, or silver, blue, and whites to make silver, whites, blues, and grays to make silver. So get your big one and just kind of put it in here. Now, again, this is skill level based on the brush use here. I'm using this really wide one for these really open areas, but you're going to have to get it close. Like right there on the face, you're going to have to get it close. So if you're not comfortable with that big brush because it carries a lot of paint and you don't want to immediately paint over the face that you got sitting there with all that wash that's waiting to dry, you can always flip over to one of the smaller brushes to get up closer and get to the edge. So you want a decent coat on this. Now, if you use a white or a gray, it won't be as hard. You won't have to do as many passes with it. I just like how the shadow on the black makes it easier to cheat. But when you put the metallics on it, sometimes it'll show through, and you'll have to do 2 or 3 coats just to get it nice and coated, especially with the metallics, which is fine. You got time. Don't use thicker paints. Always water your stuff down a bit and get it on there. Now, see right here, if you not comfortable with it getting up on the face, use a smaller brush, but always pull away from the edges. Like if you're getting close to a face, don't want to take the paint and push it towards the face. You always want to get the edge as close to the face as possible and pull it away. So again, this is really close, so I'm going to switch over to my my workhorse brush here and use that to kind of get in here so I don't accidentally metallicize this face that I just did. So again, it's all about your comfort level, man. If you want to paint an entire tank with a 00 brush, which is that super tiny facial one that we're going to use later, do that. It'll make sure that every millimeter of that thing has got just the amount of paint you want on it. This is just how to do it in a hurry. And again, I've been doing this 20 years. That's why I generally use the bigger brushes to get through there. And I've screwed up enough where I'm not worried about screwing up and having to go back and redo it. It's not that big a deal. So again, here's where we're talking about always rotate your miniatures. Like I totally spaced on that piece of armor that the breastplate's going to be poking up right there in that neckline. Didn't see it till I just was working on the face. So don't worry about it. Just be sure to go back and finish with the face, whatever you're doing. Why his eyebrows stick out further than his helmet, I don't know. So the face looks kind of weird here on the video, but when I was painting it, you could tell that the eyebrows and nose and mouth stick out further than the armor, so it doesn't look as, I guess, choppy or broken up as that. Be sure to turn it, get all your edges. Now you can kind of see here across the breastplate right there on the edges where that black primer is starting to show through. See? So just give it another little coat. Acrylic dries relatively quickly, so you don't have to worry about it. Like I've seen people paint miniatures with oils, which that I think they're psychotic because it takes so long for oils to dry. But I always go, and I went back and did the faceplate off camera just because I forgot. So now we're going to do this leather part on the shoulder. Same thing. 3 colors. It's going to use the same wash as the armor, so we're just going to go ahead and paint at the same time that we can wash them both at the same time. We don't have to wait that long. So get your deepest brown. This is like a Rhinox from Citadel. And you can see this is leather. It's got stitching around the edges there. And so just, again, use your smaller brush. Get it as close as possible. The only time I really worry about bringing it all the way down to the edge of something, because most of the time a wash will cover that for you. That's a cheater thing for you there. Is hair. You don't want your flesh color directly up into the hair. So, everything else, just kind of pull it as close as possible as you can, but it doesn't have to touch. Your wash will cover that. So get your deep brown, get your next lightest brown, blend it. And again, you want to just start brushing out to the side and try to knock most of that off your brush. You're using your brush as a mixing tool and then as a painting tool. So with leather, generally the idea is to start at the top and work your way down. This is generally how the weathering works. That's where the sun and the rain and whatever, and it dries first on top and gets wetter on the bottom. So just give it a nice once over here with that blend. And again, when you go to put it on and you're blending it, the bottom layer does not have to be completely dry because it helps blend it in there. So, now clean your brush. You just get that straight mid brown by itself. You put it right next to the other one. You can see how much lighter it is. And again, top down. Once you go over the shoulder, it's not really going to show that much. But yeah, that front part, you want to go top down with it. Give it that weathering look. Okay. Now, we got that. Go ahead and when you're going to do a wash, make sure it's all your paint's dry. If not, it might pull the paint off. It'll smudge it, mix with the wash, and then you're going to get a whole lot darker stuff. So I'm going to kind of show you with this helmet here. Go ahead and get your whiter brush. It soaks up a lot of stuff, so when you go to put it on, it's just going to gob it on there. So if it starts pooling, like in a corner, like right here, bloop, right? Go ahead and just put the brush, put it right back on there, and it'll soak it right back up off the miniature. Right? You want to leave it in the crevices. That's the whole point of it. If you got too much, just go ahead and put it anywhere else on a model that you're working on. Just use that brush to go ahead and pull that off. Now, again, you're not just using super streaks on it, but you don't want to just drown a model. You don't want a dip model, which is where they used to just get a can of like a wash, or I think it was like a wood stain, water it down and just stick the whole model in it at once. It works for some, if you're not working on details, if you're working on like bulk models for like armies and things. But yeah, not a good idea. So brush this on, make sure it gets in all the cracks and crevices. Be careful around your face. Like you said, you already have that lighter wash sitting in there, so you don't want to do it too hard unless you're trying to make your face look exceptionally dirty, which Agrax is notorious for that. It's a lot of cheater. Once you start getting into the miniatures, the gaming stuff, people immediately is like, oh, if it looks dirty, it's somebody just spilled Agrax, or that's the easiest way to give it shadow instead of using the layers and stuff. But Agrax is a great mid. So while we're letting that dry, let's go ahead and do the cloth. I'm going to use it blue. I'm going to make him Athenian instead of Spartan. Again, I want to start with this big one, but I'm going to go with the shorter one to kind of show you here. So we're just going to give it an entire coat of this darkest blue. This is my Crag stuff. I kind of wish I grabbed my Nagaroth Knight stuff, because this one's a lot brighter than I expected. But this will work. Make sure, again, in the cloth, you want to get it all in the cracks and crevices. Now, like I said, that's why I went back and got the smaller brush, because it fits down in there without too much work. Make sure to get your bottom of the model and where it touches everything. Kind of bring it through there again. Make sure you get all the crevices. Now this one you lucked out. With the size it was, there's actually like cloth texture on the cloth, which is nice because it's going to make so much shadow when you hit it with that lighter brush and that lighter blend. So just gave it a nice blue all over. This is my mid blue. This is my light blue that goes in the middle. So I just left the paint on the brush. Took a little bit of this blue, and we're just going to blend it over here on our palette. So just kind of knock it around, mix it around. So start taking that dry brush, and then you're going to go across. You're just going to use it as across the grain as it was. Like you see the ridges of the cloth, you don't want to be running your brush down in the cracks. You want to run it across the top. Anywhere the light would be is where it would go lighter. That's the whole point of shadowing, right? So just get a little bit. Take it. Don't worry about it being too thick this first time. If it starts blending too well, add a little bit of your lighter stuff. But just go back, just hit the top edges of that cloth with it, and it'll start showing that depth, which is great, right? So keep doing this. You're going to do it all the way around. Again, doesn't have to do it in one pass. You can just keep turning it until it gets to the point you want to do it, and then go a shade lighter. I'm not going to use any washes on the cloth here. I want it to look cleaner and starker. So I'm just going to use the 3 colors. Got here, you can start to see where it's kind of popping out on those edges, which is really nice. That's what that looks like with that. So we'll close those down. Get your really light blue. This is my light blue. And then again, just mix it with what's on the brush, putting it right in the middle of the mix of that, and it mixes it down with those other colors. So it's just going to be a natural progression of that color. And just, again, super, super light. Brush off almost all of this paint. And then take it and run across there. Now, if you want to check it and see how much is coming off your brush, hit yourself in the thumb with it. Like I said, don't want to oversaturate it with this super high color, because then you got to go back and just do it over and over. Again, if you touch blue to the copper, or you get other colors on the blue or whatever, don't worry about it. You can always go back and retouch it. I screw up here in a minute, and I'll show you how to do that. So now, the more and more you use it, the less and less you have the lesser or the deeper blues. So just don't worry about it. Just keep using the lighter blues. Keep testing it out. Just keep going around and around. Just a little bit of light blue on those edges. This is great. You can do this with any kind of colors, reds, yellows, oranges, anything. When you got the 3 colors, even if you just got to add white to it, this is what your color is going to look like over and over. So now we're going to our last stuff for our flesh. We're just going to go ahead and use our mid-tone. That's this one. Going to mix it on a new part of the palette, so we won't get any blue or anything in it. And then that high-end stuff that's almost like pastel white. And you go ahead and mix that in. And again, it's going to be the high-end blend, so you want very little in your brush. You want super light layers of this stuff, okay? So just get it. And again, you're going to go, just hit yourself with the thumb, see how much comes off. And then you want to start where any of the textures are. You want to go across the textures and kind of bring out those highlights. This is going to be the skin that is closest to your light source versus, deeper down in the armor and stuff. So just give it a little light brush here and there. Boop, around your neck. Done. All right, that's going to be it for your flesh. Now, when we're doing this, I want to go ahead and finish the details on the face. Now, this is just black. I'm going to do his beard and eyebrows. Great, big, bushy fucking eyebrows for some reason. I guess the Athenians were into it. So, get you this dark stuff. And now, hair is what I was talking about. You want to pull it all the way down to the flesh. Like, you don't want that flesh color up in the hair. Even if you just got to put the hair color down on the skin, it's a lot better. So you can just kind of brush your flesh color back up to the hair. You don't want the flesh color in the hair. Hair color in the flesh is better. You can just, straight hair. Like, you can always fudge that later. But when you got flesh color straight in the hair, then it's like, he's got a big bald spot right there in his chin, but it's swollen. Black is notorious. It separates in the bottle where it won't coat. Like this, you can see how thin that was on my thumbnail. So just remember to go in there, makes it a little better. See, Viola blacker. So go in, get his mustache. He's all yelly, Spartan-y looking or whatever, or just angry. All right, and you can see I accidentally dropped my brush down and caught him right in the chest, right there on that blue. So we'll deal with that in a minute. But yeah, so don't worry about it. It happens to everybody, especially if you're just not paying attention or you pull your brush back and you're minding your stuff and you just bump into it. So just go ahead and get your blue and retouch it. You don't have to paint the whole thing of cloth to make it blend. You don't have to strip it all down. Just get a little bit of your base paint, just cover it, let it dry, and then you're going to do the exact same thing we did painting it the first time, but just in that one little spot, right? Super base, put it on there, put it thick, and then you're going to do, that, blend it with a mid-grade, pull it over there, then blend it with your high color, and then you're good. Now, if you don't let it blend or let it dry all the way, there's a chance that you might pull the paint off before it's done. See, like that's pretty. I don't know why I'm doing this off camera. I apologize. So you see, it's got to brush it on there. Oh, it pulled that base paint right off. You can see that black spot again. So it's important to let it dry. Kind of cover it up here. There. Now let that dry and you're good. So now, teeth and eyes. Now, if anybody tells you they enjoy painting teeth and eyes on a miniature, they're a fucking liar. Okay? It's the most frustrating, pain in the ass kind of stuff. If you mess it up, you gotta redo parts of the face. It's notoriously bad for that. This is my super fine brush, so the smaller the brush, the smaller your screw ups. Very little paint. Now, the eyes are always sculpted. The easiest way is to go from the inside to the out, or the outside to the in. If you try to go top to the bottom, you're going to have a bad time. All right? So just get as little paint as possible. Try to move it around in there where that eye socket is set, where it's already painted. This is where you're either going to love your sculptor or curse their name until the day they die. So just get a little bit in there. Now, again, don't have to be super thick, doesn't have to be super white. I don't like how white this guy's teeth were. We're going to go back and I'll show you how to do some magic wash later for the super white teeth. But yeah, so get your eyes and your teeth. That's the only thing that's going to be white on your face unless they have like a big scar and you want to put really white on it. So again, from the inside out, this is a lot easier to see this time now that it's actually on camera and I'm not just showing you my desk. Again, inside out, outside in, either way, because the shape of your brush is going to match the shape of the eye, because from corner to corner. So I was going to use a green here. The green doesn't show up great by itself, so I'm going to use a really black pupil to do it in here. So it's notorious for when you go to put in your pupils, that one's going to point one way, that one's going to go the other way, and you're just going to have somebody that looks confused. Don't have to worry about that. You get your paint just a little bit, and you're just going to put a single dot right in the middle. Bloop. Try to get as much off of the brush as you can. The thing about these little brushes, they don't hold that much, so you might not have enough for both eyes at the same time. So try to get them to at least look at the same direction. If not, just go back, use the white, put it over the top of it. See, that green doesn't show up that well. So then you got your pupil black. And you're just going to make a single dot, sorry about the focus here, boop, right in the middle. And this will help if you're like offset the eye colors and they're not exactly pointing the same direction. If you can put the pupil in there, sometimes you can kind of pull that correction without having to redo it. This does not show up on camera very well, so I apologize. But yeah, if it's not that great, just go ahead and make them a little bigger. And if it doesn't work, if they look goofy, just get that white. Go back over it. Sometimes because the white is so light, you're going to have to go over it 2 or 3 times, paint over it, do it again. So, here you go. Now, our armor and our leather is dried, so now we're going to go back and do our last coat over our agrax. This is the Rune Lord Brass, so just a lighter metallic bronze color. Again, super light. You just take this, knock most of it off, put a little bit on your brush, knock it off on either your palette or your thumb, to where it's just barely leaving streaks, and then when you go down here and just do this dry brush, it's just going to pick up just the edges, which is really nice. This is what makes that sheen on the armor, where it actually looks like metal. It doesn't just look like painted resin or painted plastic. All right, so you do your headpiece, do your shoulders, do everything, but again, just super light ones. You don't want it to go way too heavy. Again, sorry I'm off camera here. I'm used to cooking shows where I'm just showing my whole kitchen, not just my hand here. I'm also using this as a testing thing for streaming. A lot of people are streaming their painting stuff on Twitch, and I'm definitely setting that up. I have all the stuff for it, but this is my first testing on printing. That's why I got the marks on my desk there, so I can kind of see where I need to be. So I decided I'm going to use some gold, use my small brush here to do some highlights. This isn't my microfine, like detail brush, but it's my smaller of my workhorse brushes. Again, I'm going to stick the handle of this other one here. This gold is very bright. It's great for highlighting top edges. Or, like I said, this guy's an officer, right? That's why he's got the plumage. So I'm going to do his medallion, his rivets, and then some of the highlights on his armor with gold instead of just stopping with the bronze. I can do these super light. Again, you can go back, hit these with an agrax once they're dry, and it'll bring out all the background, all the edges, and all that kind of stuff. Super simple, and then do a highlight of a higher gold and then silver when you're highlighting gold. I'll do another one later with the metallics when we're doing either non-metallic metallics or just proper metallics, and we'll do it that way. But yeah, just go ahead and cover all this in. That really kind of stands out, looks really good. So I like how it looks at the rivet, so I decided to go ahead and do this filigree on his chest, which looks really good when you put it on there. It's like, oh, well, that makes it stand out where it doesn't just look like he's got like this random thing there. And again, it goes under your cloth, so just use just barely edge of your brush and get all that. And then I decided to do his bat nipples here. I got carried away with the gold. I was like, no, there's just all kind of stuff. Let's just do this. And here's another trick. Like, when you're doing really small details with this, put the paint on the brush, get most of it knocked off, and then use the edge of the brush. Don't use the point of it. Start it and just use the edge of the brush to kind of just scrape the paint off along those edges. That helps, A, to get the paint down the edge, and B, to highlight the part that's up top without covering the stuff that's underneath it, which is really nice. So be sure, like I said, it's almost like a dry brush. You want to put very little on there because you don't want it risking running on anything else. So now it's time for this headdress. Do the same thing. I highlighted that with gold too, just because I could. Now, non-oil, again, I didn't like how white his teeth and eyes were. So, non-oil is another wash, but it is a black wash, so it is super dark if you get too much of it. So again, I'm going to show you how this gets in here. You put it on, you can see how dark that gets, and just kind of get it to where it's just bare minimum in there. And it won't cover everything. This isn't a contrast paint. Just put it right over his teeth, and it'll just pick up the lines in the gaps in his teeth, the lines in his teeth, and not cover his teeth. You can do the same thing with just a black paint with a lot of water, kind of blend that in. Now we're going to do our last coat of our brown. I forgot about the leather. So get that that high point of brown that we had. That's our mid. And then you mix it with our white. All right, just go ahead and mix those just straight on the brush. Or you can take them and put them on a palette. Mix them together there. And then just get most of it off. And again, with your leather, you want to go from the top down. With your final highlight, it gives it that weathered, kind of worn, beaten leather look. He's an officer, so he's been around a while. He didn't just buy in after college or something, right? So just give it that high-end part on it. Try not to get it down the gaps. Be sure to get it all over the stitching, the saddle stitching that's going down the side of his armor. And that's good to go. So we need to do hair. This is going to be our last step. This takes forever. I apologize. I know this video is already running late. But, yeah. So this is where you got to kind of pick. If you're going to do like one color, it's fine. Just pick it one way. I'm going to do this blue and white in the old school way. So let me kind of show you this. Now when you're doing white, you need your shadow color is going to be either a gray or a blue, which is usually the best. I'm going to go for some older look, so I'm going to use a gray. Give the entire thing. Now I'm going to split this blue and white, so I'm going to put lines in it. But the easiest way to do this is just go ahead and coat the entire